Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and you're probably wondering who Pete Carroll and John Spytek could potentially bring in to be the next DC for the Las Vegas Raiders. Coming up, I'm going to give you 10 names that you could at least keep in mind and think about in terms of who the next guy could be. Maybe taking over for a Patrick Graham. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But I think that this video is important because Carroll is a defensive-minded head coach. And when you look at his most recent jobs, I'm not going to go all the way back to 1973. I'm only going to look at his most recent jobs, and even that is longer than I've been alive for. You can see the connections that he has in Seattle, USC, New England, the New York Jets. This is not going to be his first head coaching gig, but I believe one of the candidates that Carroll is going to bring in is somebody that maybe the Raiders look at as being like, you know what, that's somebody that could potentially be a head coach in the future, or simply somebody that just thinks the exact same way John Spytek and Pete Carroll do. So these candidates are not ranked in any particular way. This is just me rolling through a bunch of names. Before I get into all the names, though, you know what? I'm going to ask right from the jump. Who do you want the Raiders defensive coordinator to be? You can give me any name. I'm not going to get mad at it. A lot of times I ask these questions because I'm curious to see what y'all are thinking. Maybe I missed something when I was out there looking at names because we have not gotten a report out there yet. This is me looking at connections. This is me looking at past reports, past rumors, and putting together the best list of names. I'm also saying this because not every name you're going to see here is a name that I would hire to be the defensive coordinator. So the first name coming up is Gus Bradley, Raiders defensive coordinator back in 2021, but also was a big-time DC when Pete Carroll was down there in Seattle. People have figured out the Bradley defense a little bit. I think you also need a certain type of player, and with the amount of holes that the Raiders have on the defensive side of the football, Gus Bradley would either be a home run or it would be an absolute disaster. Let's go to another name here. It's Dennis Allen, somebody who's got some Raider ties from the past, was the former head coach this past year for New Orleans. I look at Dennis Allen and I go, some people are built to be defensive coordinators and some aren't built to be head coaches. Dennis Allen is a good defensive mind. Wasn't built to be a head coach. So maybe not a great hire, but maybe if you give him 3 years learning underneath Pete, could be an option to keep in mind. Let's go to another name here. Matt Eberflus. Mitch, what are we doing? Flus just got fired in Chicago. You're right. He was a bad head coach, but a good defensive mind. Eberflus did magic on the Indianapolis team before he ended up getting that job in Chicago. So to me, we got to be able to pair somebody with an equal idea of Pete, and the fact that we've seen some of these candidates from Chicago and Seattle do a little bit of overlapping, I don't think it's the craziest idea out there. Next name coming up, Clint Hurtt. More ties here to Pete Carroll. Philadelphia defensive line coach, got to be able to win in the trenches, and if you want the Raiders to put a big focus on winning in the trenches, Clint Hurtt's a name to keep in mind. Though, if I could have a few beers on a show, that name's going to make me a little bit nervous to say. Let's go to George Edwards here, linebacking coach for Tampa Bay. I'm bringing him up because I did a show 2 weeks ago, and I said, if the Raiders hired John Spytek, it's just the name that I was told to keep in mind. The Raiders hired Spytek. Could they potentially look at linebacker coach George Edwards? He's done some good things with that organization, but from top to bottom, that's really the only candidate that I know that I've heard anything about in terms of Spytek. There was also some ties to, Ben Johnson, but from what it looks like, just George Edwards because he's got those ties to Spytek. We got 5 more candidates coming up here in just a moment, but today's show sponsor is GameTime. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed, views from your seats, and they have flash deals. If you're trying to go to the big game, you got to download the GameTime app, create an account, use code ChatSports for $20 off your first purchase. Now, obviously, terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code ChatSports for $20 off. If you're wondering what time it is, it's game time. Whether you're trying to go to a football game, a basketball game, maybe you're looking to try to go to a baseball game in the summer. I don't know where you're going to go. The big game, Chugs is all in on the big game, which $10,000, I get it, is a lot of money to go see it. But at the same time, if you're like, well, I'm going to be in the area, I'm going to be hanging around, and if you go on the GameTime app an hour, 2, 3 hours before kickoff, see what the tickets are, the tickets will end up going down. But, if you plan on going somewhere this weekend, it's Friday right now, and you're like, hey, I'm going to take a weekend trip. One of my buddies told me he went to Atlanta for a 24-hour wraparound. You know why? you just want to be able to go hang out in Atlanta for a little bit, you can go check out some fun events there. And like if you like to make those trips, GameTime is the perfect app to be able to do that. Promo code ChatSports, $20 off. Download GameTime today. If you want the best seats at that lowest price guaranteed, click on the all-in price and check out the GameTime picks. Huge shout out to GameTime for sponsoring the Raiders Report. Let's go to another name here that's got lots of Pete Carroll ties, and it is Kris Richard. Kris Richard has bounced around some different NFL teams. Some of y'all might know him more from, his time that he was with the Cowboys. He got that Cowboys job because he really helped make that Legion of Boom in Seattle, which, by the way, are we calling it the Legion of Doom or the Legion of Boom? Let me know down below. Let's go to one name that I think you guys might like. Wink Martindale, Michigan defensive coordinator, and anybody from Michigan has got ties to Tom Brady. Wink has talked to Brady before, and I'll admit I mentioned Martindale a lot more because I was a little bit hopeful that Todd Monken might be in the realm of possibilities for the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, that's not the case now, but Wink, with his past coaching stints and with his ties to Michigan, will at least get a look for the Raiders. Let's go to another name here. This is one that's been, circulating a little bit. Ryan Nielsen, the Jags defensive coordinator. They just hired Liam Cohn. And I believe Liam Cohn's going to bring in his whole new staff, right? Like, you don't see an organization fire a GM and then not allow the head coach that they bring in to not be able to build their pieces. Nielsen is a respected mind, so it's just the name I'm going to throw out there. Another name that I think needs to be considered is Jim Leonhard. And I say this one in terms of an interview. We saw the Raiders reach out to Vance Joseph. We saw the Raiders reach out to Steve Spagnuolo. And even if you're not considering hiring those guys, I think it's smart to at least bring in somebody from one of your division rivals. And Jim Leonhard is one of these coaches that I think is a young guy, but starting to get some recognition in some NFL circles of just being a pretty darn good coach. The final name that we got here is this on our potential DC candidates. It's the name that I think a lot of y'all wanted me to talk about. Patrick Graham was scheduled to interview with the Jacksonville Jaguars on Thursday. Obviously, that one, I still think the interview happened. He obviously did not get the job because Cohn's going to go there. But to me, I think Patrick Graham is one of the smarter guys in the league, and he's just one of the better defensive minds in the league. And I go back and I look at a lot of the systems that worked for Carroll in the past. The Kris Richard, the Gus Bradley, it was about being able to find players that fit your system. The Raiders' defense isn't the problem. I think if all of our players get healthy and we re-sign a lot of those guys, and you put that with Patrick Graham based on the past history that, Carroll's had in Seattle, I think Patrick Graham might be the best name on this list. But if he doesn't end up coming back, I will wish him nothing but the best. I want PG back, though, and I would be happy about it because that also means we get to keep a Rob Leonard, a Ricky Manning, a Gerald Alexander, and a lot of these good coaches that we've been able to get through the time. So if you guys want, take a screenshot. At Mitchell Renz 365, you can share this on social media. I'm sure that I'm missing a name or two. And again, once we get more reports, once we hear more names being thrown out there, you will get a more in-depth video from me. No matter who the next DC is, though, they got to be somebody that thinks the exact same way as Pete Carroll. It's got to be somebody that you hopefully believe can potentially take over for Carroll because you ended up hiring a defensive-minded coach in the first place. Tom Brady, John Spytek, Pete Carroll. If you believe in defense wins championships, let's make sure that we hire the right guy here for the Silver and Black. Also, make sure you join us on Sunday when Chugs and I are going to be going live for the Bills and Chiefs game. And if the Eagles and Commanders game is a close one, we will go live right before the fourth quarter there. Bills Mafia, we're rocking with you, but I really want to be able to rock out with a great DC.